Welcome back to another episode of the Super Intelligent Podcast. I am Emily Forlini, and I'm here with the esteemed Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Having a great weekend and just, living off the fat of the land, taking it easy. And no, I'm not. I'm kidding. I've been working like a dog, but not as much as some people have been working. I'm tossing to you now and lobbying over a transition. So yeah, a lot of people are working hard.
Football received. I received the pass. I'm running with it. Topic for this week is 996 work culture, which I just found out about this week. I don't know if it's just me, but I had a friend who was actually got an offer from OpenAI, and she said, I don't know. The thing is, it's 996. And I said to her, what is 996? And she said, well, that's this thing everyone's doing now.
Yeah, what's the 411 on 996?
Yes, she said it's you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and you also work 6 days a week. And I said, what are you talking about? But you've heard of this, right?
I have. It's a concept that emerged in China and has moved to the United States, especially Silicon Valley and San Francisco, the tech industry. It's not a, in California, it's not a requirement. Like in China, they're like, okay, this is the job. You have to be at your desk at 9 until 9 and et cetera. In California, it's more like they've picked up the idea. It's kind of like a cultural thing as opposed to a work requirement, because of course people assume a 40-day work week, 996 gives you a 76-hour work week or something like that. So it's a lot of hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have been talking to people, I've been doing interviews, and the thing is, everyone does say that it's from Chinese work culture, but actually it was ruled illegal in China in 2021. So there was a lawsuit in China, but now everyone in San Francisco is just doing it and saying, oh, it's from China, no big deal. This is what you do when you're serious. And from what I can tell, though, you're right. It's more of a cultural thing. So it's not something that HR managers are saying publicly. It's more like this implied thing people are doing. And it's not dictated, you have to clock in at 9, clock out at 9 kind of thing, because, corporate jobs many of them haven't been like that for a very long time. It's not a return to that. It's you just work all the time. And basically you start in the morning, around 9 normal time, and then you work through lunch, and then most people will go home but then log back on, and you will be expected to answer emails at 9, at 10 p.m., delivering something for a client late at night. And then on the weekends, it's not Saturday. I thought it would be Saturday would be the 6th day, because Sunday is kind of like day of rest. You get yourself together, prepare for the week. And I talked to someone today who's doing it, and she said, no, Sunday is when you get back into it. You're ready to go for the week again. So everyone comes in on Sunday. And I was just like, woo, this is just getting worse and worse for me.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, what was interesting to me is that I'm like, those monsters. How could anybody expect anybody to work those kinds of hours? But I've worked way more than that in the past. In the 90s, I launched a magazine called Windows Magazine. I wasn't launching it by myself. I wasn't the lead person. I was an employee, an editor there, but I was the managing editor. We launched the first issue with 7 people, and it was a 150-page print issue. And for the first, I'd say 5 or 6 years, I was at work at 4, and I worked until 7, 8 o'clock at night every day. And then I worked weekends. I barely ever had even a single day off. And nowadays, I'm a bit of a workaholic, but oftentimes I'm traveling, or I'm driving my wife around somewhere because she's doing various things, or we're doing a gastronomic experience. But if I'm not doing any of those things, if I just have the whole day under my own control, I will literally start working at 4:30 in the morning and literally work straight through all the way at night, way more than 12 hours in a single day. I mean, the reason I do that is I love my work. It's fun to me, and I enjoy it, and I do it in really nice places, and I'm always, relaxed, and it's not this big stressful sweatshop sort of mentality, but still I'm doing the hours, and it just takes a ton of hours to do the stuff that I do for whatever reason I do them. And so it's it's kind of I have mixed feelings about it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think working hard is really good. I was a fan of going in the office and being engaged in your work at a time when everyone around me, it felt like, was saying, work from home, it's the best. I'm never going in, remote forever. And I instinctively kind of rebelled against that. And I was like, well, seems like you guys are a little disengaged. Might it be nice to check in with your colleagues every so often? So I kind of struggled with what I felt like was people not really wanting to care about their work. And this is like the exact opposite of that. And so I like work. I do. This is just interesting to me as a trend because you described, like, you were starting something. So founders have been working around the clock forever, right? This is a little different because it's in more of a corporate environment. Like, some of these companies have hundreds of employees and they are certainly not the founder, but they're working like founders. Basically, it's been kind of ignited by AI because these companies, they want to get all the investment money. They want to work hard and fast. They want to get all the deals. It's a land grab right now where they want their company to be the forthcoming AI company that got all the clients in this space with their AI tech. But they have a lot of competition. So they're just side eyeing each other in San Francisco. Who's going to win? Who can work the hardest? And that's just apparently what's going on right now. That's what people are talking about on at bars. That's what, the one night they can go out. They say, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, I work at XYZ place." "Yeah, it's 996." And then someone goes, "Yeah, me too." And that's the culture right now.
Yeah. And of course, speaking of San Francisco, speaking of letters like X, Y, and Z, X.com is based in San Francisco, I believe, still owned by Elon Musk, who bought Twitter, et cetera. And he, if you recall, when he bought Twitter, he started just firing everybody, ending whole departments, and said that instead of having so many employees, he was going to force his employees to not only work in the office, but work, quote, extremely hardcore, unquote, by which he meant 996 type of hours at the very start. But this idea of just massive workaholism in tech companies, like you say, is always been a thing. And I've always, whenever I hear about countries like France saying things like they ban people from, please look this up on your own, folks. I don't quote me on any of this stuff, but I'm not sure I'm getting the countries right. But I believe it was some countries like France that ban you from receiving or sending work emails after 5 p.m. and they prevent people from working more than 35 or 40 hours a week. That to me sounds oppressive. I would refuse to work for a place that didn't let me work as much as I wanted to, because I like to do good work, and good work takes time, especially if you're a journalist. It's time consuming, and yes, there's an obsessive quality about it, because you can never have personally, I can never have a completely clear conscience, because I know that if had I worked a little harder, I could have made the story a little better, and I could have gotten a little more information or better information, or I could have reached out to somebody more, interviewed another person. I always feel like the job is never done, and I think that's common for journalists, right? And so I get the workaholism. What I don't approve of is when it's forced on people to work ridiculous hours, when young people are sacrificing their time away from their families, and when it's just this horrible ordeal. I think that's pretty awful.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, as much as I like working, it does strike me from my conversations I've had with people so far as a little bit of a scourge to society, this whole thing. I mean, the people I've spoken to are very, very, very burned out deep in their bones. And they're just looking at each other and they're wondering, how much longer are we doing this? And that's kind of everyone's thinking, it can't last for that long, can it? A couple of years. Someone I talked to today, they said in their company of 200, well, first, I guess they had 10 or 20 people. And then in 6 months, they got up to 200. It's like these companies are just total, as they say, rocket ships. They're going somewhere and they're working their asses off, and they think they're going to get someplace. But of the 200 people, 3 are parents, to your point. So, I mean, and the 200, I'm sure, are either single or
The
struggling to
other,
date.
well, the thing that has changed, one of the things is changed is, like you're saying, when people work those kinds of hours, is because they themselves, their career is a rocket ship along with the company, right? That was the case for me when I was editing a print magazine in the 90s. I was a rocket ship. The magazine was a rocket ship. Everything was a rocket ship, and it was all good for me personally. But nowadays, you look at the salaries of CEOs, which are, if you measure against the average employee, has gone from like 4 times to like 200 times the valuations, or I guess the net worth of of the of the richest billionaires that own a lot of these companies is just completely out of control. Elon Musk just got his pay package approved, where he stands to make as much as $1 trillion. So if you're working for Elon Musk and you're working 996 and slaving away, you can't help but think, okay, I'm doing this so because $400 billion net worth was not enough for Elon Musk.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a question for me about what these people are going to do with what the amount of money that they would like. And I guess, of course, the real estate market in San Francisco is very competitive and all these ships, all the tides are rising. So if you want to get a house, if you need to be doing what everyone's doing. So I get that. I just feel like they're giving up so much. And these are kind of formative years, like your 20s, your 30s. And at least the people I'm speaking to with such levels of burnout, I'm not sure maybe they'll look back on it like you do and they'll say, oh, that was amazing. Hopefully it works out for them. I think it's a risk. I just think it's a big risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The other thing I have to say, because I've been making some personal comments about my own workaholism, I actually can't tell a lot of the stuff that I do. I can't tell if it's work or not. I have an obsessive need to know everything. So I'm like always researching, learning, like reading. It just never stops. And I don't know, as an opinion column, like, I'm an opinion columnist, so like I bring in all kinds of random stuff into my writing. I'm not just writing about a phone. I'm writing about culture, and I never know if some chunk of knowledge about saber-toothed tigers is going to end up in a column. I literally have no idea. So I try to know everything, and I also know myself well enough to know that even if I was unemployed, I would still do that, right? So it's not like, is it work? Is it not work? I can't even tell sometimes.
Yeah, I just think it's a little bit different, like what you're talking about, or at least from my perspective, having worked in an environment like these people are talking about and now being a journalist, it's very different to be working for yourself and to not have as many meetings, not have people breathing down your neck, not have people giving you feedback after a meeting and saying, hey, you didn't really hit the mark in your comments. I think you really derailed that meeting. These like intense cultures. It's really different when you get an email at 7 p.m. from someone that says you must deliver this by 10 p.m. or we're not going to hit our, IPO numbers. That is quite different than what we do now, which is researching and writing and stuff. So it's different, I think, when it's self-directed versus when you're in this pressure cooker environment. Everyone's on Slack, everyone's emailing, everyone's talking about the next deal. I mean, that's where the real burnout, I think, can come in because it's not as much you're choosing.
Exactly. And when you get that email at 7 p.m. on Sunday night saying you have to do this, you have to deliver this thing by Monday morning, if that late edict is the result of somebody else falling down on the job, slacking, taking days off, doing something, leisurely or whatever, it really hits poorly, because it's like, what if others had done their job on time? I wouldn't be handed an emergency, right? The other irony is that we get a lot of mixed messages about burnout, about workloads. Everyone says, "Oh, the what do they call it? The 4-day work week," where they've tested it in Europe and elsewhere. People are more productive. Okay, well, so are people more productive if they work less, or are they more productive if they work more? We're told that both are true. So it may vary according to the type of work people are doing. I have no idea. But there's a point at which, you get so fried and so burned out, and your brain just completely rebels against your trying to force yourself to focus and work, that you become very ineffective. And so I really have no idea whether you're more effective with a 4-day work week or a 6-day work week. I have no idea.
Yeah, I agree. I talked to somebody who he founded a company and he said that he was doing his own version of round the clock, I'm a founder, I work all the time thing. And he did it for a couple years and he loved it, but he did realize it wasn't quite effective. He's on his 13th hour of working that day. he's been trying to solve a problem for 4 hours and cannot do it. And he said, and then I would sleep and I'd wake up the next day and I'd solve it in 10 minutes. And I just realized my brain was totally fried. And he also said that he realized after doing that for 3 or 4 years, he was really distant from his family and friends. So he won't go back to it. So he kind of had his like 3 or 4 year period where he did it. And I'm wondering if that started, this 996 vernacular started over the summer. So I don't know if the clock starts summer 2025. We'll see how many people are doing it by 2030.
Yeah, the 996 thing started recently, but the workaholism in China did not start recently. Of course, they have suicide nets around the dorms where young people slave away in iPhone factories. That's all very well known. So China is culturally, they are susceptible to workaholism. If you look at a lot of Chinese movies, the hero is the person who says, I'm just going to work so hard to be successful. Even martial arts movies, right? The hero martial artist is the person who's training like super hardcore all night with teacups on his head and like doing all this stuff. That's just part of the culture there. And it's part of American culture as well. It's part of South Korean culture, definitely part of Japanese culture. So it's part of culture. It is definitely not a part of the culture of a lot of countries which rebel at the idea of even working a 40-hour work week. So there's a cultural element to it all. But I think it's good that it does have a name, because now we can talk about it rationally. We can think about whether this is good for society, whether, people are being exploited and so on. So I think it's kind of interesting.
I think that's actually a good point. And we could have a debate about it. Everyone knows what we're talking about. I interned in Costa Rica one summer. They actually work 6 days a week, which I thought was interesting and I didn't expect.
Yeah. Well, Mexico has an amazing work ethic as part of their culture. They just get it done and they work hard, and people are just like no complaining. They lift heavy stuff and it's just one of the reasons why gastronomy in places like Mexico City has a huge advantage to a lot of places in Europe. I have friends in Europe trying to run restaurants, and they just can't hire people because people don't want to work in a restaurant. I had a friend in northern Italy who had a restaurant, and their chef would just call and say, "Yeah, I don't feel like coming in today," and he did it all the time. And he knew that they would have a hard time replacing him. Whereas you go to Mexico City, and people, the restaurant employees, for example, are just so dedicated. You can call them, at 10 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, we need somebody." And it's like, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. They really, really have this amazing work ethic. And so there's an advantage for people who are trying to make something happen with employees. And I assume that, all the way down through Central America was all originally part of the one political entity at some point where all these cultures were formed. So I'm not surprised that they have this amazing work ethic. I know in El Salvador, we spend a lot of time, incredible work ethic. They just are willing to do incredibly hard work. And so, it's a mixed bag, I guess, workaholism and willingness to work really hard. You can be ambitious and you can get a lot done, and society can get a lot done, and people can be exploited and taken advantage of, and lives can be made a lot more miserable.
And there's also the work smart, but not, what is it? Work hard, and you don't always work hard and smart, I think. But some people say I work smart, not hard. But I mean, from what I can tell, it does sound like something kind of special is going on at these companies where everyone is bought in, to accept the job offer, to exist. You have to be bought in. These are really, really high functioning people, and their productivity as a group, it sounds like, is just unmatched, or trying to be. So sounds like no one's dropping the ball. If you drop the ball, you get called out. You people are just cranking 24/7, which is remarkable. Good luck. I mean, I'll think about how much I want to work in light of that. It's a good self-evaluation moment. Things I've been hearing are very, very interesting, I think.
Yeah. Well, speaking of work, I'd like to talk, if you don't mind, about something I've been thinking a lot about, which is this concept of, we live in a very high-tech world. We basically live in a cyberpunk novel. And, we have people who are on the brink of becoming trillionaires who have their own space programs. Elon Musk wants to build a robot army. We have companies offering the service of designer babies. People are falling in love with AI chatbots. This is like super high-tech stuff. This is super, sci-fi stuff, which has become ordinary culture for us. All these things are happening at once. And there's also this cultural notion that we should try to be as high tech as possible, that we have to use AI chatbots and even more than that, we have to explore all the AI based options at all times, figure out which ones will hyperdrive our productivity. And if somebody's using an old fashioned tool, there's a stigma around doing that. People writing handwritten notes, for example. And so I think we need a cultural shift around this idea. And I think that we need to get to the point where instead of thinking that we should always have the highest tech thing, I think we should really be open minded about low tech, old fashioned technologies and take on a right tool for the job kind of mentality. So, for example, I still believe that search engines are better than AI chatbots for finding out information in a way that's going to be accurate. One reason for that is that if you do an AI chatbot and you just ask it a question about something, right? It's going to have like I use a couple of chatbots that use searches, right? So they're RAG systems like Perplexity, and yeah, the sources are in there, but like most people are not looking at the sources; they're just getting the answer. And okay, now I have the answer. When you do a search, you're like, well, here's what PC Mag says, and the second link is Ars Technica, and the third link is a New York Times article of all things. And so as you're exploring those things, it takes longer, it's less convenient, but you're also collecting other things, like you know who said what. Oh, look, Emily Forlini is the one who wrote the PC Mag article. Okay, so she was writing about XYZ. So you're picking up contextual information. You're also you kind of like, if you're looking at multiple sources, this whole concept of hallucination doesn't really exist. If five sources all agree on something, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid information. You can pretty much believe that that's likely to be true. As a culture, we're losing the attention span, if you will, to read books, especially paper books. The idea of somebody reading a paper book is like, wow, who does that anymore? But science tells us that that is the best way to get information on complex topics or to get good stories and novels and stuff like that is paper books. They're better than ebooks. Ebooks are better than audiobooks. Audiobooks are way better than just getting snippets here and there from TikTok or from other sources. And so I think we should fight to hang on to the skills that go with older technologies, because what we really want, and this is something that sort of sparked my imagination on this topic, and I'll shut up in a second and let you talk. But Mark Zuckerberg said in the future, he said this during an earnings call in July, in the future, people who don't have AI glasses on their face will find themselves at a cognitive disadvantage. And he's wrong about that. I think that the people who become over reliant on advanced technologies will have a cognitive disadvantage. Wearing AI glasses will give you an informational advantage, but not relying on AI glasses will give you a cognitive advantage in terms of your memory, your reasoning ability, your ability to think things through. So I think we need to protect ourselves and our own abilities and work harder and smarter also at not letting all these skills atrophy, not letting our attention span go down to 1 second. And I think we just need to work harder. And I know you agree with me.
I do. I love that you wrote this piece and I love that you made this point. And also, it's a really cool follow up to our last kind of segment, if you will, on 996, because it's so easy to get caught up in this hype. I mean, the hype machine, I don't know if it's ever been turned up higher than it is right now. It's on level 1,000. That's where you get the 996 thing. And it's such a good reminder that that's fine, but make sure you're working smart. And you also have invented all these things. We invented books already, to your point, a long, long time ago. They still work very well. Even little things like we're like making the logo for this podcast. I was trying to use a lot of AI generators, iterating over and over again for the image, and it was just having trouble, not quite getting it right. And then we put, I think, some things that we found in an AI generator, and then some of our own images, and then we just regular old Photoshop or like in a PowerPoint slide. I think I just moved stuff around. And I was like, yeah, the old tools actually were so much faster. So I keep a close eye on this, and I think you make a very good point, Mike.
Well, I realized in thinking about this topic for this podcast that I've written another article that was actually kind of in the same vein, and I hadn't thought of it. I think I wrote it for Machine Society. And basically, my conception of the article was the AI, AI is not planning to overthrow humanity or keep us as pets or do anything. That's not happening. But if they did want to do that, here's how they would do it. And then I listed all the things that are happening. You'd get people dependent on algorithmically sorted information so that they prefer the products of algorithms over their own lives. You'd get people, you'd test to see how you can make people behave differently for an attention algorithm, like for Instagram. Like you can make people twerk in public. You can make people like push the limits to see what ridiculous things you can make people do who are trying to satisfy the machine requirements of getting attention. You would basically write articles for people so that they would lose the capacity to think for themselves. Like this would be a brilliant plan by AI to enslave us. And once we had no place to go except virtual reality to live lives that are not our own in places that don't exist, they can just use us as batteries or whatever they want, right? So this is a way to think about what we're doing to ourselves and allowing ourselves to be essentially replaced by machines because we just lose skills, we lose our own value, we lose our own contribution to a certain extent if we don't know how to how to have a complex thought in our heads, right? So I really think that we should embrace the skills that are required for older technologies and build our attention spans by reading long books. And once we've read a long book, we should read a longer book and a more complex book and a more difficult book. You told me before you read the Odyssey, I think it was. That's a long and difficult book, right? So and it's really good for you to do that. It's really good for people to challenge themselves with highly complex material again and again and to build our capacity. We shouldn't just give up the idea that we want to build the muscle of our intellectual abilities.
Amen. I'm still stuck on twerking, that you said that word. And I'm just realizing we did
Yeah.
convince people to twerk 996 because we invented strippers.
Yeah. Yes, we did. And I want everybody, if you want to see what people are willing to do for an algorithm, find it's on Instagram. I think it's on the web. It's on TikTok, I believe. It's called Influencers in the Wild. It's a delightful collection. It's videos of people over there doing videos. So it's some dude in the shallow water and then somebody else is filming them and they're just being absolutely ridiculous in public. Why? Because what matters is the algorithm. If they can be ridiculous enough in the right way, then they'll go viral and they'll be successful as influencers or whatever it is they're trying to do. And if you think about it as trying to please the requirements of software, of people trying to make the software happy, it should give you chills. Who was it that said that the Instagram generation perceives the present moment as a future anticipated memory? They don't live in the now. They live in that this is going to be remembered in the future. That's what this is right now. And so it's pretty chilling. It's pretty sci-fi. And I think, I think you shouldn't twerk in public. That's my advice to all of our listeners. Don't twerk in public in front of a phone. It's just, friends don't let friends twerk in public. There's a show title right there.
There you go. I think what is chilling about what you just said is the idea of working to please the software. Because we do encourage people to embrace new tools and new tech. We talk about that quite a bit. What's new, what works, what doesn't. But that's a different mindset on it. Like I'm embracing this tool to enhance myself, kind of like what Mark Zuckerberg is saying. But you're kind of flipping it on its head and saying you are living your life to make this tool happy, especially as they get more human.
Yeah. And back to the thing that I wrote, there's one element I didn't mention. If AI had a plan to overthrow humanity and take over and do all the sci-fi things that various movies have depicted it as doing, one really great idea is to get people using AI to write software and get that dependence, get a real dependence. So we really depend on AI for writing software to the point where only software understands the software.
Right. That's kind of where we're at, honestly, with vibe coding. I doubt many engineers know 100% what's in there. Um, there's a bright spot in pop culture that's coming to mind though, when you were talking about, read books and read harder books. And I thought, yeah, maybe people should even read books from other countries and really expand. And then I thought of this new album. Do you know Rosalia? She makes huge hits.
No,
Okay,
no.
let me look up her biggest hits, but massive, massive artist. Um, and
Okay.
anyway, A Perla, Sexo Violenza y Lantas. Those are some of her new songs. Let's see where she's from. She is like huge. She's just a massive artist, one of the biggest ones right now. And it says she's a Spanish singer. She's from Spain. Anyway, yeah, born in Spain. Okay. So she was making like reggaeton and very kind of like poppy stuff. And she just came out with an album that is opera in different languages. And it's like this crazy opera single. And people are just loving it. She's getting so much praise for this kind of like new form of opera that's, completely different than the rest of the music that she made. Everyone should look this up. I mean, maybe if you know her previous songs, it's more stark.
Yeah.
And she's doing all these interviews like, yeah,
Yeah.
I want to create something real. I want to, push my craft. People are saying she's going to be nominated for best album. It's just like, it was a huge risk. Like she literally released an opera album. And she's doing all these interviews like, I don't want AI and I want people to want more than that. And I want to push myself. And she actually did it, created music videos, it's all over TikTok. People are absolutely loving it. So I thought that was inspiring.
That's really fantastic. And it reminded me of another point that I was thinking I'd like to make on this podcast, which is that we are on the brink of a world in which every single electronic device that makes noise can translate from one language to another. AirPods Pro, the new ones, which I'm going to be buying within the next 2 weeks, translate languages. You have them in your ears. Somebody's speaking French, and you can hear English in your ears. This is a great thing, but I think that this is another opportunity for us all to not say, okay, great, I never have to learn a foreign language, but instead say, I don't care if everything can speak French. I'm going to learn French. And you and I talked about learning French before. We both want to learn French. The other thing that I've noticed lately, I think in the last year, because everybody's foreign language skills went down during COVID, I think, everybody that I know, including my own. But lately I've realized that, wow, I kind of speak Spanish pretty well in a lot of circumstances. And I kind of speak Italian in a lot of circumstances. I'm kind of acquiring foreign languages just because I'm always in foreign language cultures. I really like that. I mean, I'm so lazy about learning. I just don't, like I said, I'm a workaholic. So I'm just to spend the time to formally learn a foreign language is something that I am not inclined to do. But man, I really like being able to speak other languages. And it's not about just the communication so you can buy, something at the store. You can understand a culture better if you speak their language, and you can connect better with people if you actually understand their language and are speaking their language. So that's another opportunity where we shouldn't just let the software do it for us.
Yeah. And it's also more fun and you have more variety, going on in your brain and your life and your conversations and your relationships. Yeah, you have a cool life. You get to do a lot of really great stuff.
In the words of the North American poet Kanye West, my life is dope and I do dope shit.
Okay, but also Kanye is the worst. So maybe I take that back.
Yeah, he's a horrible Nazi. But if you discount the racism and the anti-Semitism and the psychotic behavior in public and his naked wife and all that, he's a perfectly lovely person. Has it ever occurred to you that his daughter North may one day write an autobiography called North by Northwest?
That has not occurred to me, but I have had thoughts on North because everybody is saying, oh, she's dressing crazy, she's wearing makeup, she's doing this, she looks so adult. I'm like, yeah, look at her parents. I can't believe anybody had any expectations for this child. I'm shocked, honestly, that they're surprised she's wearing makeup. They're surprised she's rapping at 12. I mean, what? Anyone had any hope? That's crazy.
Look at Will Smith's kids, but just she's not wearing a rubber thing over her face. Why? Because she's rebelling against her parents.
I actually think Willow Smith is a gem, though, and a real musician.
Yeah. She has a real inclination toward creative thought and performance. So great. That's great. I mean, she has very brilliant creative parents. And so, yeah, that you love to see it. What you don't love to see is when you have these mega superstar parents and the kid is a little dull, wants to be a tax consultant or whatever.
Right. But that might be a good outcome, at least in this case. If Kim and Kanye made a tax consultant, that would be very interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
They could probably use one. But
that's all I got. I'm veering into pop culture. You can tell we're recording this on a weekend.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So so I'm going to wrap it up unless you have other thoughts to convey or ideas to bring up or other segments.
No, I'm good.
Well, my fellow Romans, all you wonderful peeps who listen and or watch this podcast, we're so happy you're here with us on this journey. And, if you'd like to give us a review, if you'd like to share a link to our podcast, if you'd like to share a link to a podcast episode because we said something interesting, please do so. We're happy for all the engagement we can. We came to this kind of late. If we really wanted a super big podcast with a massive audience, we should have spent our time building a time machine and going back 12 years and starting it then, because by now we would have a gigantic podcast. But we started it more recently, and therefore we have a lot of growing to do if we want to have a bigger audience. And so you and only you can help us get there. So I want to thank you so much for listening and watching. And please send your ideas to us, superintelligentpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website. Check us out on Spotify. Check us out on Overcast. Check us out on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to or consume podcasts. We have no ads. We have no sponsors. We have no subscriptions. We have nothing in terms of money. You can't pay us. We won't take your money, but we will take your positive reviews, your 5-star ratings, and we love that sort of thing. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week, probably. Thanks for tuning in.